Hey guys, it's been a little while since I last talked to you. I hope everybody's doing well. I wanted to tell you two stories today. The first story is the story that we would hear on our regular Sunday service. It's a story about the trip, or the journey, I should say, that two disciples were taking to Emmaus. Now, Emmaus isn't really that far away from Jerusalem. It's only about 7 miles, or about 15 kilometers away, so not that far. But it is if you have to walk it. And so they were walking to Emmaus, and they were talking about what had happened. This was about 3 days after Jesus had been crucified. It was the evening of the third day, and they were on their way to Emmaus, and we don't know why they were going. But they were talking about everything that had happened over the last 3 days, about Jesus having been crucified, and then about that morning and how the women, like Mary Magdalene and some of the others, had actually thought that they had experienced the risen Jesus. And other disciples, some of the 11, had also gone to the tomb and experienced something of the same. Now, these two disciples that are part of the story are not part of the original 12. One is Cleopas, and we don't know the other one. Anyway, they would have known Jesus, and they were talking about Jesus and wondering whether what the women were saying and what some of the other disciples were saying was even true or possible. And then in the midst of that, Jesus shows up and starts walking with them. And they start telling him about everything that had happened. And they don't even recognize that it is Jesus, though. They probably just thought it was some other traveler, and were surprised when he asked them, well, what is it that you're talking about? And so they tell him everything that had happened and some of their own fears and disappointments over the fact that Jesus didn't seem to be the one they had been waiting for after all. He wasn't the Messiah who would save them. And then, as they finish up, Jesus, I guess you could say, kind of scolds them a little bit, because he tells them, or asks them, how they could still not understand what the Messiah had to do, even in spite of everything Jesus had told them, that he did have to go to Jerusalem, and he did have to go to the cross, and he did have to suffer in order for people to be truly saved. How could they still not understand, he thinks, or he tells to them, even after everything that you've heard and seen, how can you not understand? By the time they reach Emmaus, they decide that it's evening, and this stranger that should join them for the evening meal. And so they get together and they break bread together, and they're about to eat, and that's finally when they recognize Jesus. And at the point he is recognized, he disappears from their midst. It seems like a strange story, I know. What does that have to do with anything? Well, it's about lots of different things. But I think in this day and age, when we're talking a lot about recognizing Jesus, especially in times when we're scared or fearful, times that maybe don't make any sense, and we're living through a time like that right now, where school is canceled and we can't always see our friends and family, and we don't always understand the reasons why, and we wonder, not only do we wonder why we have to do these things, but we wonder, well, where is God in all of this? And when we ask that question and wonder aloud, well, where is God in all of this? It's easy sometimes to not see that God is walking right beside us, just like he was walking with the disciples on the road to Emmaus. He was walking right beside them, and they didn't even notice. Walking right beside them and talking with them, and it wasn't until he ate with them that they really recognized him for who he was. It's the same with us. Sometimes we don't know that Jesus is walking right with us and is supporting us and caring for us, and it's maybe the only reason we make it from day to day sometimes. We don't see it. We don't think that Jesus is there, maybe because there's no great burning bush like with Moses, or because there's no great sign from heaven, or Jesus doesn't make Jesus or he doesn't make himself apparent to us. So we think, oh, he's not really with us. And yet if we stop and think and realize that we have the love of our parents, and we can still see family and friends even if it has to be over a computer screen, and that we can be happy and relatively happy, and we have enough to eat, and we have a roof over our heads, and we have opportunity to do things that can keep us entertained, and we know that one day we'll go back and be able to see family and friends again, and go back to school and all those things that we can't do right now. All of those little things, all those little ways where we can find hope and stay relatively hopeful over this difficult time, that's God with us. That's Jesus walking right beside us. It's not always easy to see, but Jesus is there, helping us every step of the way, guiding us, talking with us, teaching with us, giving us the love and support that we need. That can be very helpful when we're scared, especially times when we wonder, Jesus, where are you? Perhaps rather than looking to the heavens or wondering what great sign we'll see that to tell us that Jesus is with us, we should just look right beside us and say, oh, there you are, Jesus, walking with me in the love of my parents or in the hope I feel or whatever it might be. So that's the first story I wanted to tell you, the story of the gospel that we'd be hearing today, or not today necessarily, but on Sunday or whenever you view the service on YouTube. The second one is a story that will be more ongoing. It's a story that I wanted to write about a little boy named Peter. I'm going to tell you the first part of that story because I wrote what I guess is the first chapter of it. It's a story about Peter who's scared of everything. And the story is going to be about how Peter eventually confronts the things he's scared of and gets to understand what fear is all about and where hope is, even in the midst of fear. But that's getting ahead of myself. I'm just going to read to you the first chapter of this story, and it just called, for now at least, The Tales of Peter, the Boy of 1,000 Fears. So I hope you enjoy it, and as the weeks go on, I will write more chapters and tell them to you. And one day we'll maybe hear the end of Peter's story. Hopefully we will. So there once was a boy named Peter. You might have met him. He lived three doors down from the corner store back when you were small. No, you don't remember him? Well, that's okay. His family moved a lot. Anyway, Peter was known as the boy with 1,000 fears. He was afraid of everything. He was afraid of the TV remote because it might have germs on it, or the TV remote buttons might fly off and fly into his eye. He was afraid of the vacuum because he thought it would damage his hearing, and because he thought it might one day catch his shoelace and try and suck him into the vacuum cleaner. He was afraid of dogs because they were faster than he was, and if they wanted, they could chase him down and eat him for breakfast. Even the little ones, probably especially the little ones. He was afraid of cats because cats were cunning. He was afraid of loud noises and whispers and grass and spiders and jello and hardcover books and bunny rabbits and paint and toilet paper, and the list went on and on and on. He was known as the boy of 1,000 fears for good reason. But oddly enough, he wasn't always like that. When he was really little, like 3 or 4 years old, he was absolutely fearless. He would jump off his parents' roof during the winter and land in the snow. He would wrestle the family dog, who was like a bazillion times bigger than he was. And his parents would find him asleep with the dog in his kennel hours later. He would get excited when there was a thunderstorm, and he would talk to anyone and everyone he would meet. Nothing scared him. Back then, he was called Peter the Magnificent, after his favorite character in his favorite book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The High King Peter, King of Narnia, brave and bold. But something started to change. One day, the brave boy was different. At first, it was little things. He wouldn't wrestle with the dog anymore, and he wouldn't run outside in his underwear during thunderstorms either. His parents thought he was just growing up and becoming more sensible. But he kept changing. By the time he was sick, he was frightened of birthday cakes. By the time he was 6, he was frightened of birthday cakes, and his parents realized that they had a problem. They took him to the therapists and guidance counselors, even to their pastor, but no one could figure out why he had changed so much. His pastor asked him, "Do you not trust that God is with you anymore?" To which Peter said, "That doesn't help when I think I might be afraid of God too." After that, everyone was stumped. The years went by and Peter only grew worse. Soon he never left his room. He did all his studies on the computer. He read softcover books, although he was starting to doubt how much he could truly trust those after a rather painful paper cut. And he looked out his window. He only ever saw his mom and dad, and occasionally his Grandma Smith. Old people scared him, and she was the only one who didn't look too old to him. His mom and dad were at a loss, and often his mom would cry at the supper table before she went to bed. She was so worried about her little boy. One night, a night not so different than 100 other nights, Peter was preparing to go to bed. He had finished saying his prayers. He was scared of God, but also scared of not praying, when there was a tiny scritch, scritch, scritch sound at his window. His first thought was, "Monkey pirates! I knew it! I knew it!" The sound came again, scritch, 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 at the window. Peter wanted nothing more than to run away screaming, but he really didn't know where to run. Horrified, he sat there frozen, uncertain what to do. If the monkey pirates wanted in, they were going to find a way in. All Peter could do was be ready to face his horrible end at the hands of Tiberius, the captain of the monkey pirates. See, when he was scared, Peter's imagination tended to run away on him. He sat and he waited, barely able to breathe. The horrible scratching noise continued, and then the window, his only barrier against absolute doom, swung open. He came face to face with the horror that would be his end. He came face to face with a hummingbird. He did the only thing he could think of. He fainted. So that's chapter 1 of the Tales of Peter, which will be continued in the weeks to come. Blessings on your day, and we'll look forward to chatting with you next week. Bye for now.